bragging, motherfucker, if you back it up. They say I'm cocky, and I say, what? It ain't bragging, motherfucker, if you back it up.
Hello everyone, Fred here from the CC Network, welcoming you back to another Friday Flashback review, where today I'm going to be looking at the 2002 Royal Rumble. And it's quite an interesting one to do, because of this legit reason. As it's the 10th episode of Friday Flashback's rejuvenated, renewed and re-released format, I decided to do something that I was going to do from the very beginning of this renewal about a year ago, and that was to do every even-numbered episode going from a Big Four pay-per-view from the year I started watching wrestling right through to the year before I started doing pay-per-view reviews monthly on YouTube, which means every even number pay-per-view that ends in a 2, a 4, a 6, an 8 or a 0 will be done from this pay-per-view, Royal Rumble 2002, through to Survivor Series 2010. So that'll give you a lot of pay-per-views and chronological order to look forward to and see how much the landscape of WWE properly changed in that time period. And any pay-per-views that I've done in the past from this list that inevitably already has a review, like SummerSlam 2002, Survivor Series 2003, and WrestleMania 22 being the big ones, they're going to have a brand new review made in the style that we currently have here, because they were done when I didn't have any review scales, I didn't have good editing and production values, and I really want to give them something nice. They either will probably get deleted or put into a private playlist where they'll never be seen again, just in case. Anyway, let's have a look at what made this event quite special to some people indeed. Well, it's the first Big Four pay-per-view since the end of the Invasion angle 2 months prior, and the WWF seemed to be heading towards a quite uncertain future, at least on air. We have an undisputed champion out to prove himself against all odds, the co-owners of the company are at war with each other, and the wrestlers are running roughshod over proceedings as the roster gets ever larger. And with the return of Triple H after 8 months from a quadricep injury shaking things up even more, this event looks set to start the WWF on a brand new era. But what will happen at this big event to set the year of 2002 off right? Is it an event that will live up to the superb Rumble event that happened the year prior that I reviewed earlier this year? Well, all will be clear by this review's end. The WWF Royal Rumble 2002 was held on the 20th of January 2002 at the Phillips Arena in Atlanta, Georgia, with 16,106 people selling out the place according to JR's commentary. However, according to the Internet Wrestling Database and Pro Wrestling Torch, there was around 13,000. Way to skimp on your numbers there, JR. This was the first WWF pay-per-view held at this venue after it played host to 2 Monday Nitro tapings and the Raw is War episode in 2001. It has since been a host to a myriad of Raw and SmackDown events, as well as the pay-per-views Backlash 2007, Hell in a Cell 2012, and Survivor Series 2015, with the Royal Rumble itself returning in 2010, 8 years after this event took place. And that will definitely be one that I'll be looking at in the list I highlighted prior. 8 years after, though. Damn. Anyway, Kid Rock's Cocky, which you heard at the beginning, served at the event as the theme song. However, on the network and the DVD, there was some random stock music played over it instead. Now we've got all that out of the way, let's get started on this thing. We start this night off with the Tag Team Championship match, pitting the unlikeliest of champions in Taz and Spike Dudley, taking on his fellow Dudley brethren, Bubba Ray and Devon. Now, Taz and Spike started teaming up at the end of December, with the team getting an unlikely non-title victory over the incumbent champions, the Dudleys, at the time, before gaining the titles from them on the 7th of January episode of Raw in Madison Square Garden in a hardcore match after Spike hit Bubba Ray with a Dudley dog through the table. The Dudleys, as you could probably tell, were not happy to be upstaged by their runt of a brother, and they decided, you know what, we're going to react to our rematch clause for the Rumble. And they've decided to make the match easier for themselves by taking Spike down in the parking lot the week before the show. However, even with that on their side, against all the odds again, Taz and Spike retained their titles after a Taz mission to Devon in 5 minutes and 6 seconds. Now, in all honesty, this match was quite a lot of fun considering how short it was, but it all hinged on Taz's contribution because, honestly, the crowd didn't care for Spike at all and was soundly bored by him playing the face in peril. Even though the Dudley Boys played a good role in singling Spike out and they worked the neck, and it was all good, but Spike didn't sell the neck for the rest of the match. They ripped the damn brace off and everything, and it felt like the match was just time wasted. The amped up pace of Taz's involvement brought the crowd alive and brought some excitement to a tag match that really damn well needed it. It was a very simple tag match that honestly, in my opinion, considering its short time, did exactly what it needed to do and was lively enough to kick the show off. Sure, it wasn't the best wrestling match I've ever seen, but considering what little time it had, I was expecting something far, far worse. Honestly, if you be careful, there are some worse tag matches out there that get at least twice as long as this, so hopefully this will be a good testament for the rest of the evening. I'm going to give it a 1.5 star rating, which honestly wasn't expected from me when I went into it, which must be a good thing, right? Next, we have another title match, this time for the WWF Intercontinental Championship, seeing the incumbent champion Edge defending against William Regal. Now, Edge had unified the United States and Intercontinental Championships at Survivor Series, if you remember, defeating the former WCW Commissioner Regal 1 month later at Vengeance to retain the Intercontinental Championship, which had now obviously been kept around. Edge decided to still mock Regal about the fact he had to kiss Vince McMahon's ass to keep his job, which was still obvious thing back then, and it forced Regal to use brass knucks against Edge to get the upper hand in a match. Edge then, in retaliation, broke Regal's nose with an execution on a steel chair. Regal then used those same brass knuckles sometime later to get a pinfall victory over Edge in a tag match. And while Edge ended up retaliating on SmackDown prior to the pay-per-view, he did so delivering a vile chair shot to Regal, resulting in a disqualification before Nick Patrick, the crooked WCW referee, got one as well, out of pure frustration, because Edge is thinking this guy just will not stop. And you know what? That frustration ended up being made much worse for Edge. Thanks to yet another brass knuckle shot, Regal pinned him in 9 minutes and 45 seconds to become the new WWF Intercontinental Champion. Now, this match was methodical and slow, which of course was obvious given Regal's ability to wear his opponents down with very physical and hard-hitting grapples and submissions. We already knew that, and it would make sense for the story for that to happen. It made even more sense for Edge to do the exact same, working Regal's broken nose with stiff shots and facebusters to make his challenger really, really suffer. And while this methodical pace usually is a bad thing, it worked out great for this feud because these two really wanted to hurt each other. It made perfect sense. This was a slow, methodical beating, and I really personally liked it. However, the crowd did not. Because they were not on the edge of their seats for this one. They found the pace incredibly boring and flat, they weren't behind Edge at all, and it really made the match suffer as a result. The fact is, though, these guys were really selling it well, really selling the beatings they were getting, they were going through the punishment and showing their endurance well. And having the brass knuckles be discovered before the bell made Edge, well, have an edge, as it allowed him to keep a cooler head as Regal went after the pin for every single big move he did, which made him even more frustrated. However, it did make the ref bump and the brass knuckle shot at the end feel entirely unnecessary and unwarranted considering how brutal the match already was up until this point. It didn't go down well with me or the pissed off crowd, who were mostly silent as I've already said, because this bad blood flowing should have done a lot more. And considering some of the moves these guys were doing, I was expecting them to be a lot more hyped, considering that Edge dished out a double underhook suplex into a double underhook powerbomb shortly after, a top rope heel kick and an apron DDT, while focusing on Regal's nose of course, while Regal did his Regal stretch, and a cross choke variant, as well as a German suplex that was so good it made Edge land right on top of his head. This match overall was physical and it told a good story, but the way the match ended and the overall lack of apathy from the crowd, like I've mentioned, really did bring this match down for me. I felt it was a good match that really was just let down by a post-Attitude Era's crowd's lack of sense for how good technical, physical, story-driven wrestling is. And honestly, I'm happy nowadays that people actually respect this type of wrestling, because it's great to see the crowd getting into this thing. But anyway, back in 2002, no one really seemed to care, and that really annoyed me, which meant it could have gotten higher than the 2.25 stars I'm giving it, because considering the two men involved, I was expecting things to be a little better. And maybe if it didn't go on as long, 9 minutes 45 seconds is a pretty decent time, but it maybe could have been a bit shorter to make the crowd feel better, but nonetheless, the match was still pretty good, and I can't deny it any more than that. Now we have another title match here, the Women's Championship match, with Trish Stratus, the incumbent champion, facing off against Jazz. Now, Trish won the women's title for the first time in her now illustrious career at Survivor Series, defending it in a triple threat match against Jacqueline and Jazz. Jazz, of course, coming into the company at Survivor Series in that 6-way match as well. And the thing is, Jacqueline was fine to just admit that she'd been beaten by the better woman and walk away. Jazz was not so keen and decided to interrupt a wet t-shirt contest on SmackDown involving the champion and then smash Trish's hand into an equipment case so she couldn't hit the Stratus faction in a match. Sounds all simple, right? But the rivalry got so intense and so, I wouldn't call it bitch ugly, but you know what I mean, that Jacqueline herself decided to put herself in position as special guest referee just to keep things under control. All sounds pretty good, right? Well, ladies and gentlemen, after quite a physical match, Trish pinned Jazz off a bulldog to retain the title in a paltry 3 minutes and 43 seconds. This match lasted quite a short amount of time, as you can tell, and you may think that this match, as a result, may not be the most fun out there to watch. Well, I will give all three women some credit for trying to play off an intense storyline in that minimal time period, because for the most part, it tried. It really did. Jazz focused on Trish's hand most of the match, implicating the psychology of the story nicely. Trish sold well on the ground, crying at the hand being hit, and also it was quite a quick match. She didn't just take it lying down a lot. She went out there, got lots of near falls, there was lots of countering involved, and it made Trish look like she could easily match up to the much stronger and more terrifying opponent in front of her. Because remember, at this time period, even if she's only been in the company for a year, a lot of people still didn't think that Trish had what it took to wrestle well and thought, okay, she's won the championship because almost every other woman in the company had won it at that point. It was her turn. No one had thought that she'd be good enough. Well, in the last two matches on pay-per-view, she had proven it, and this one has done exactly the same. And the thing is, overall, I quite liked that, because it got the crowd behind her. They noticed that she was obviously the face in peril here, and the crowd did make some noise, which is good to know. However, it didn't really go too long enough to really build up anything towards a major crescendo. We didn't get to see Trish be worn down and fight back properly. And also, on top of that, Jacqueline didn't really do much. Jazz got in her face once, right before the end. She didn't really do anything, and it really irritated me having to watch it thinking, oh, for God's sake, you're in that role, do something. And the fact is, there's one final thing that annoys me with this match, because I've already mentioned earlier on that you can't use the satisfaction if you've got a busted hand, right? That was the whole point of the story. Well, Trish hit the match-winning bulldog with the arm and hand that, of course, has been injured. This is a problem, because I know it's not the move that you allocated that you shouldn't use because of this, but come on, you're using a different move that's roughly similar. It just doesn't make sense to me, and it kind of makes my sense of disbelief completely go. The match was basic, and honestly was more exciting than I thought it was going to be, so I'll give these three women some credit, with a 3/4 star rating. It's almost 1-star territory. I just needed Jacqueline in there. I needed the obvious lack of selling with that bulldog to really be absent, and the crowd to be a little more vocal, and we could have been looking at a 1-star match here. But these three women did what they could in the time frame they had to put on actually what I think was quite an okay match. It's poor still, but what more could they have done? Seriously. Next, we have a very interesting match indeed. The co-owners of the WWF Vince McMahon and Ric Flair taking each other on in a street fight. Now, Flair returned to the WWF after an 8-year stint in WCW on the post-Survivor Series Raw, announcing himself as McMahon's business partner in arguably one of the best segments pretty much of the last 10-15 years, tops. Don't believe me? Go watch it on the network or on YouTube. It is entirely worth it, and it is hilariously awesome. Nonetheless, they both traded blows verbally and physically over the next month as they drove each other quite mad, because obviously McMahon supported his heels and the guys who should have been fired in WCW. I'll get to the Booker T later at some other point, and Ric Flair was just being Ric Flair, encouraging Stone Cold Steve Austin to basically go round and kick all of Vince's associates' ass. All well and good, and then you factor in Jericho's title win into all the proceedings, and you get quite a lot of mad things. But Rick found an important clause in Vince McMahon's contract, because he's not only the business owner of the company, he's also marked down as a wrestler, which meant in Ric Flair's idea, he could wrestle any time. And he thought, if he's that damn good, why can't he face off against me to showcase how good of a wrestler I am? And the match was set for the Royal Rumble. Now, McMahon kind of went a bit off the edge at this point and thought, you know what, I am better than Ric Flair. I am the man. I am the boss. And inevitably mocked Ric Flair's attire and just basically mocked all of his mannerisms in that famous promo in Madison Square Garden, and decided to equalize and hit Rick over the head with a lead pipe, busting the legend open for all to see. And as a result, Flair made it a street fight, because he could. Oh my god, though, the worst part of all this was the promo video before this match, reminding us of this promo segment, with McMahon saying that beating up a legend like Ric Flair turns him on, and I don't want to have to hear that again. That is, oh god, that is horrifying. Just bring on the match. Anyway, after quite a brutal match indeed, Ric Flair made Vince McMahon tap to the figure 4 leg lock in 14 minutes and 55 seconds. This was a match that I honestly didn't think would be that good, let alone be that interesting, despite what the premise was building up to, but I was roundly surprised with it, primarily knowing that both Flair and McMahon hadn't have been in the ring for some time. I wasn't sure what to get, but they delivered a pretty solid match. The crowd were into every single thing that Flair did. Of course, this is a former WCW Heartland after all, but with McMahon in charge of most of the slow, methodical, physical offense, they ended up having to will Nature Boy on to fight his way back, which got an unusual atmosphere to this whole thing, because they weren't really that interested in McMahon beating up Flair, because I think they kind of got the gist that Rick would obviously get back into it, and in the last 5 minutes, Ric Flair did solely dominate the offense and added some pace to get to a nice crescendo and have the match end on a really nice and happy note. But I'm also very happy that this match didn't have any kind of interference, which for a McMahon match actually benefited from underbooking. Weird, I know. And finally, of course, as you can see with the ratings on screen, the highest rated part of this match and the shining star of it was the psychology, because there were some fun things here. McMahon pushing Flair down as the match begun, showing how visibly stronger he was. Physically, not technically. Then you've got McMahon busting Flair open with a trash can, taking a photo, a Polaroid of him and his bloody Ric Flair next to Flair's kids. I mean, that's just ridiculous. It's horrible. While also working and attacking Flair's legs throughout so he couldn't do the figure 4. And it was just so mad. And then you had Flair turn the table as well with the picture shot of his own and biting McMahon in the process, and then using a lead pipe because obviously karma's a bitch, and then went on to get the victory with the figure 4 despite his legs being battered. That, I have to admit, was one minor piece of psychology I had to neg on, but at the same time it was all so good at this point I didn't really care. However, alongside the non-selling of the legs, there was also the blade job being visible because he cut himself before the trash can hit his head. Nuff said, it's better to do it when you're rolling around on the floor, face down on the canvas, off camera, so you don't have it be noticeable. Nonetheless, away from those negatives though, this was an entertaining match that built itself up well, but it could have lasted less time to make the fans be a little more invested into it overall, because again, Flair didn't get that much offense. I wish he had more, because it would have made it look more realistic, I would say, because he didn't look much more like a threat to McMahon, and McMahon isn't a wrestler, so controlling the pace for 10 minutes, not the best thing I've ever seen, but there we go. It could have been a little higher than this, but I'll happily give it 2 3/4 stars. And this is quite amazing. It's another McMahon match on pay-per-view that actually exceeded my expectations and, according to my review scale, actually hit the mark, which is impressive. Well done, Vince, you've done it again. Next, we have the WWF Undisputed Championship match, with Chris Jericho, the champion, taking on The Rock. Now, of course, as you know, it's been reiterated and replastered over everything millions of times since then. Jericho famously defeated Rock and Austin on the same night at Vengeance in December to become the first ever undisputed champion in not just the WWF, but American wrestling. It's pretty damn incredible to think that it was even done. But since then, since the titles were put on his shoulders by Ric Flair the night after the show, Jericho had highlighted that, yeah, he's the best ever, and inevitably, he is going to prove he is the best. Of course, Ric Flair took note of this by putting him in a myriad of matches on Raw and SmackDown to test himself, by putting him against Austin inside a cage later that evening, Rob Van Dam the next week, The Rock and Kurt Angle in a tag match, Rikishi. There was so many people going up to take a shot at the ever-cocky and ever-confident Chris Jericho over the following weeks. But Jericho often won through interference or underhanded tactics, and of course I've already mentioned Vince's wrestlers and the assistance of Booker T did help in that fact. On the SmackDown, though, just after January kicked in, The Rock defeated Booker T to earn the shot at the undisputed title at the Rumble, and Jericho, of course, thought that Rock was taking this entire thing as a joke, that he was not a joke, and inevitably he was going to prove that he is the greatest champion there is, and that he is as great as he thinks he is, by beating The Rock for what he considered the 5th time in his career to ensure his overall greatness. Well, we're just going to have to see about that then, aren't we? And you know what's so fun about this? This is the first match in a while on these Friday Flashback reviews that's above 3 stars. And you know what that means? I have to go into utmost and complete detail. Let's get on with it. Now, as Jericho comes out, JR and King have noted that due to The Rock's status, people are expecting a new champion. They don't think that Jericho can beat The Rock here, which is interesting to note as Jericho and Rock stare down as the bell goes. The crowd are pumped, they are right behind this, as Jericho puts his hand in The Rock's face and tells him to just bring it, and well, the Brahma Bull does, going right after Jericho with a Samoan drop and a very quick 2 count. Jericho then runs for ringside, but of course, the People's Champion is right on his tail and lines up a spear back in the ring with multiple punches. Jericho gets a kick in and a flying forearm, laying in some punches of his own and a turnbuckle clothesline. Jericho goes for a spear, rebounding off the post, going in shoulder first. The Rock then rebounds off the ropes with a facebuster, but Jericho is quickly back up, countering with a hot shot of another Irish whip. This has been fast and furious in the opening few minutes, and the fans are eating it up like pudding on an open bar. Nonetheless, The Rock regains control of a knife-edge chop lot while eating a wheel kick shortly after for 2 from Jericho. Jericho repeatedly states to The Rock on the ground that he is the champ, hits a suplex and covers with an arrogant boot to the chest for 2. Jericho then goes to untie the turnbuckle pad as Hebner is checking on The Rock. Jericho lines up on walls, but Rock flips the champion out of the ring. He's back on the offensive though. He's not letting the challenger get back to his feet at all. This is mad. There are so many counters and momentum shifts here that it's difficult to really keep up with. It's quite mad. It is quite mad indeed. The crowd are chanting Rocky as Jericho goes to the top rope, taunting with the hands around the waist belt motion as he hits a clothesline for 2. Jericho locks in a choke. Rock nearly passes out, but comes back raring to go, but he eats an elbow to the face by the champion. Jericho goes up to the top, but gets hit nuts first into the turnbuckle, eating some more hard chops to the chest because honestly, The Rock can do what he wants. Rock lines up a superplex and it connects. Both men are back up not too long afterwards though, and Rock hits successive right hands and a nice back body drop style throw for 2. An Irish whip is reversed by Jericho into his one-handed bulldog and a lion salt. Jericho could go for the pin here, but he's not. He goes and hits a second lion salt. Somehow though, against all the odds, Rock has kicked out. Lord knows how at this point. Jericho snaps up at the referee, pushing Earl Hebner, who pushes back, because he's Earl freaking Hebner. Jericho then taunts on the second rope, waiting for the Rock to stir up. He goes for the drop kick, but Rock catches him and locks him in the sharpshooter. All seems lost. Rock looks set to win his 7th championship, but Christian and Lance Storm, who of course Jericho had teamed up with in the weeks prior to this, had I not mentioned, distracted the referee right as Jericho taps out. Both men are then sent packing by The Rock, who hits a rock bottom by Jericho after... This match is a bit mad. I'm going to have to repeat myself. Both men are sent out of the ring by Rock, who gets hit by his own move. Rock bottom by Jericho, but somehow Rock kicks out. How was he just kicked out of his own move? Lord knows. Nonetheless, Jericho then decides to hit the people's elbow because he's that much of a cocky douchebag. But Rock gets up and he launches him right out of the ring to a massive pop. Rock hits Jericho's head on the ropes and strips JR's and King's table bare. Jericho then fights back and hits Rock on the Spanish announce table, which Jericho himself takes apart. Jericho then lines up a rock bottom, but Rock battles out and hits a rock bottom from one table through the other. What a lovely spot that was. And Rock gets Jericho back in the ring, goes for the cover, but how? Jericho kicks out. How has he done this? Lord knows. The Rock is poised for the rock bottom, but Jericho hits out and locks in the walls of Jericho. Rock struggles in pain, somehow gets to the ropes. Jericho goes for it again, but Rock rolls him up into an inside cradle, but Jericho kicks out at 2. Jericho then jumps out of the way into a clothesline, and Hebner is then knocked down instead. Jericho hits the Rock over the head with the title belt with quite some force. Then, of course, WCW crooked referee Nick Patrick runs down to the ring and counts, but Rock kicks out. Yep. The crowd are going absolutely batshit. They can't believe what they're seeing. Jericho isn't happy. He's complaining to Patrick, saying, what the hell was that? That was a 3. He then wanders and walks into a DDT with authority by The Rock. Rock covers, but Nick Patrick ain't counting it. He's shrugging his head, going, nope, I'm not counting your damn shoulders to them. I'm like, go on, what the hell are you doing? Rock is not happy. Rock is incensed as he gives the former WCW referee a rock bottom, and then Jericho a spinebuster. He's ready for the people's elbow, which he connects, and he goes for the cover. He gets a 3, but the referee's still down. Hebner ain't up yet, and Rock is just trying to revive Hebner. He's shaking him, trying to get him up. But he walks into a low blow from Jericho. He then rams Rock's head into the exposed turnbuckle, which he did earlier, and with assistance from the feet on the ropes, gets the 3 count in 18 minutes and 43 seconds to somehow, I would say 48 seconds, somehow, against all of the odds, retain the undisputed championship. This was an electric contest from start to finish. The crowd were rabid, seeking Jericho's reign to end, and what we got was an unusually even contest, with momentum shifting left and right, with Jericho holding his own against the then former 6-time champion, with many near falls and counters showing how evenly matched these two former tag partners were. It just added much more drama and intensity than the build did going into it, and it paid off handsomely. Jericho's egotistical taunting and gesturing as the incumbent champion drove himself forward, and it often led to Rock gaining the upper hand, keeping that momentum on point. Christian and Storm, sorry, I'm not looking at the the Un-Americans just yet. They interfered, and it was nice because it wasn't elongated. And the ref bump on the dirty win could have hurt the match too if not done properly, but they didn't last very long or impact the match too much, and it made the crowd lose their shit, so it's all well and good. Jericho used Rock's moves, which was lovely, and considering they teamed together 6 months prior, it was nice to know that worked to his favour in the knowledge department. And that table spot was fantastic. It was the only piece of non-in-ring action in the entire match, and I'm happy they only did one, because if it turned into a brawl that just descended into chaos, it wouldn't have been a very fun match to watch if it did. Now, while this match was going on all cylinders, with the crowd going nuts, with everything happening in it, and it was really exciting, that I felt that it needed to balance the pace more, because there was only 2 moments of action where it was grounded. The chokehold and just, well, Jericho and Rock putting sharpshooters and walls of Jerichos on them, but they didn't last very long at all. I felt that they needed to make and stretch the match out to make it feel more grounded, and less aloof, which, thanks to a lack of body psychology, ruined any expectations of a realistic fighting contest that, in my opinion, ruined its spectacle a bit, to the point where it's actually causing me frustration trying to read these descriptions to you. Nonetheless, though, this was quite an entertaining match that showed the star power of Rock and the ability of Jericho well, and while it wasn't out-and-out great 4-star territory, it just missed out on that by the smallest of margins. It was still a great contest to watch. I'm going to give it 3 3/4 stars. This is the best match of the night by a country mile, and it's a match that often gets forgotten about in the shadow of the main event Rumble match, so I would stress to all who's listening to this, go watch this match. It is really fun. I may have described it all in its entirety, but it's worth it. Go and see it now. And I tell you now, for a match that didn't break 4-star territory, for me to go out there and tell you to watch it, that's a rare sight to see, but go and take heed of my warning. Go watch this fun match as soon as you can, because we've got a giant Rumble match to look forward to next, and it should be quite interesting. The 2002 Royal Rumble match, with the winner poised to face Chris Jericho for the Undisputed Championship at WrestleMania 18. Now, before we start this match here, I have to mention that it started on negative territory, because the surprise entrants, who I love a Rumble match for, were announced before the match began, in the build-up to this event and in the intro trailer of the pay-per-view itself. So inevitably, the surprise entrance element of this entire match will have to be negated completely, which means this match does start on quite a poor foot. The question is, does it get any better? Well, seeing as I have rated it above 3 stars, I have to go into detail, which means you guys need to get some popcorn, because as my 2001 review highlighted back in January, this process might end up taking a while. And we start off with Rikishi and the returning Goldust at number 1 and 2 respectively. They brawl with Rikishi teasing a hip drop and almost eliminating Goldust twice afterwards. The Big Boss Man is number 3 and he goes right after Rikishi, laying him out with a third clothesline, and an attempt to eliminate Rikishi is thwarted by Bradshaw entering at number 4, who lays waste to all in sight. Rikishi even hits a stink face on the Boss Man, with JR and King describing what Rikishi ate that day. Disgusting. A clothesline and a kick to the face eliminates him shortly afterwards, and number 5 is Lance Storm, Mr. Personality, as JR quips, doing nothing of note, which is quite honestly what you'd expect. Thrilling. And the commentators don't do any of the same. Al Snow is number 6, coming out to a good pop, because what does everybody want? Head, apparently. Storm meets a clothesline from Hell with gusto. The Atlanta crowd end up chanting, "We want head," because I've already highlighted that's what they want. Number 7 is Billy Gunn, laying into Bradshaw, but he eats a nice big boot. Snow eliminates Storm with a nice super kick off the apron after both men spar on it. Goldust eliminates Bradshaw after he tries to eliminate Rikishi. Number 8 is The Undertaker, who I must remind you is hardcore champion and a heel at this point in time. He chokeslams Goldust out of the ring, throws Snow out, clotheslines Rikishi, and throws Billy to the floor. He is on his own in that ring, and you do not want to be left in the yard with The Undertaker ready and stalking it. This is going to be damn fun, I can tell. Matt Hardy enters at number 9 with Lita by his side to a pretty sizable pop. Lita tries to save Matt from a chokeslam only to be caught herself, but she rebounds with a low blow, a neck breaker, incorrectly called a twist of fate by the commentators, allowing both men to lay beats on Taker, but not for long as the momentum swings back in the dead man's court. Matt's brother Jeff comes on at number 10, saving his brother from elimination, with both men's careers nearly being ended by Taker on Raw in recent weeks, as we may have noted. Team Extreme almost puts Taker to the sword, but Taker rebounds with a double clothesline, and in an attempt to eliminate Taker, Jeff goes with Matt hitting a last ride, with the elimination following afterwards. And then Maven comes in at number 11 with the fear on his face so easy to tell, because this tough enough winner is going into his first Rumble with an absolute badass. He goes into the ring with Lita and the Hardys going after Taker once more despite being eliminated before they're dispatched fully. He tells them to get their asses out of his ring before you know what's coming, and that is Maven hitting the dropkick heard around the world that eliminates The Undertaker from this match. Oh my god, it's the most memorable moment, in my opinion, in Rumble history, and the biggest moment of Maven's entire career. The crowd, the commentators, myself, everybody who has ever watched this never stops getting sick of watching this moment, because they are absolutely losing it. Taker, though, doesn't seem to take it very well. He's shocked, bemused, and outright furious. He takes Maven to the outside and smacks him in the head with such a vile chair shot. Ugh. It makes you realise why they removed chair shots to the head all these years later. It really does. He then pushes the cameraman down as well, for good measure. Scotty 2 Hottie enters at number 12, seemingly unaware of what the hell is going on here, as he eats Taker's right hand. Maven is then thrown back into the ring and eliminated legally, as Taker then just continues the barbaric punishment. He takes him out into the crowd before finishing his punishment off completely by throwing Maven headfirst into a popcorn machine, as the security is really trying, but failing to hold the crazy crowd back in the concession area. Absolute madness. The European champion Christian comes out at number 13, waiting diligently for Scotty to re-enter, which happily he does. Diamond Dallas Page, of course, then comes out at number 14 to a good pop from his former WCW homestead, laying right into Christian with a nice discus clothesline. Scotty hits the worm on Christian to a great pop, but DDP dispatches him pretty damn fast. Number 15 is Chuck, laying into DDP, giving Christian a helping hand in the process of as both men do the best to eliminate him. The Godfather enters at 16 to a magnificently huge pop, bringing out many of his hoes. The crowd go mental for every second of it, and Christian eliminates DDP. But the camera doesn't care about this storyline development between these two, because they're focused on the eye candy. Godfather enters at number 17, and then Albert comes in right at that point, which, what a waste of 2 minutes, as King happily asks for the entrance to be replayed. No thank you. Happily for me, though, Albert lays waste to the Godfather with a lovely big boot. He's quickly dispatched by Christian and Chuck, who eliminate the Godfather after he misses the hoe train. Perry Saturn is number 18. Now there's a man I care very little about, and coincidentally nothing happens in between. Number 19 is Stone Cold Steve Austin, everybody. Oh my god. Coming out to a humongous pop. Christian's eliminated, followed by some stunners for Chuck and Saturn. Austin is then waiting in the ring for his imaginary watch to go down. He's watching the clock down, and Val Venus comes in at number 20, who gets the crap stomped out of him. Test is number 21, as he teams up with Val to try and eliminate Austin. Now that fails, as both men suffer the same fate as the 3 men before them. Austin is sitting in the ring, watching the clock down, and the next entrant changes his emotion and facial expression dramatically as it's Triple H. Both men stare each other down throughout the game's entire entrance, as the crowd are quite honestly losing itself. This has more meaning than the Godfather's long way drawn out time to get to the ring, and it is so much more fun to watch. Whew, indeed. Both men proceed to lay each other out with punches as the Hurricane comes in at number 23. Both Triple H and Austin are down. Hurricane humorously attempts to chokeslam Austin and Triple H as they get up. Both of them just look at each other with the most bemused looks on their faces and think, what the fuck's this guy doing? Let's kick him out. And they do, chucking him straight out in arguably one of the funniest moments of this match. Farouk is number 24 as he takes advantage of Triple H and Austin's beatings before Triple H rebounds, a stunner follows, and Farouk is then soon after eliminated. As Austin tries to eliminate Triple H, Mr. Perfect returns to the WWF for the first time since 1996 at number 25 to a great, respectable pop, proceeding to have a go at Austin and Triple H. Kurt Angle comes in at number 26, going right after Triple H as the crowd humorously chants, "You suck." What? You suck. What? At him, which is absolutely fantastic. Big Show comes in at number 26 to no reaction whatsoever. He does lay waste to Angle and Perfect though, almost hitting a double chokeslam on Austin and Triple H as well, but rebounds with a double clothesline. Angle tries, and I do stress the tries, to hit a German suplex on him, but is saved from a military slam by Triple H. The reason of this? Well, JR suggests that Triple H sees Big Show as more of a threat than Angle, which is sound reasoning because I think Triple H wants to beat the crap out of Angle after interrupting his return a few weeks prior to this. Nonetheless, Kane is number 28, who stares Big Show down. And you'd be thinking right now, Kane versus Big Show at WrestleMania? This has to happen, right? Wrong! Both men go for choke slams, a low blow by Kane as he scoop slams Big Show over the top rope to a humongous pop, and a brilliant reaction from King and JR too. Angle then dumps Kane out with an angle slam over the top. Rob Van Dam comes in at number 29 with his dubbed music. Ugh, thank you, Network. And a pop in tow, immediately hitting Angle with a 5-star frog splash. He gets a rolling thunder in on Austin, but is laid out by a pedigree. Now, all 5 men are down as the drama builds. There's 1 man left, and it is Booker T. He drew the luckiest number, and he immediately eliminated a still unconscious Rob Van Dam as he looks around and hits a Royal Rumble Royal Spinneroonie. The thing is, though, it's then followed by a Stone Cold Stunner by Austin with enough momentum to eliminate him. Fun as hell. It's now down to Mr. Perfect, Kurt Angle, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Triple H. We're down to the final 4, and I can't wait to see how this one goes, because one of them is going to WrestleMania. Austin is almost eliminated by Perfect and Angle. Triple H is down following an Angle slam. Mr. Perfect is about to be eliminated by Austin, but Angle follows up to eliminate the Rattlesnake. Damn! Austin then returns with a steel chair to hit all 3 men square in the head, and he walks out with the crowd cheering him on for creating organised chaos in there. All 3 men get back to their feet. Angle almost clotheslines Perfect over the top rope. A perfect plex follows for a nice pop. Triple H then runs and clotheslines Perfect out. We're down to the final 2. Now, following a lovely belly-to-belly suplex, Triple H nearly gets punched out, fighting back over the choke takedown. Triple H goes for a clothesline. Angle looks to have thrown him out as a result over the top rope. He celebrates, thinking that he's won. But Triple H has held on to the top rope. He grabs it and gets hit with a facebuster, and he throws Angle out to end the madness. Triple H wins the 2002 Royal Rumble match from the number 22 spot, with the match timed at a then record, I should say, 1 hour, 9 minutes, and 22 seconds. And Triple H displays great emotion, great pride, and he celebrates as the show goes off the air. There's a lot in there. I completely missed the entrance of Chuck. Then again, he wasn't that memorable. What the hell do I say? Nonetheless, this Rumble was a good one. The crowd got into a lot of the wrestlers, as well as some big moments that really hit the mark. It lasted a long time and had a lot of spells where wrestlers were fighting for their place in the match. However, even with that, a lot of the eliminations didn't happen by that many people, where a certain few cleared the ring every third of the match. It felt like that this match was really just holding itself, with each wrestler baiting their breath before a big star came to eliminate them. And having the surprise entrance announced beforehand meant, from a watching perspective, combined with this waiting to be eliminated, that the match felt a bit anticlimactic at times, which meant it just lacked real buzz. And if not for Maven's elimination of The Undertaker, I would say this match was devoid of a lot of intrigue from an outside perspective. Luckily, it held its drama, and having over 6 people in with the number 30 spot coming in really pulled off some much needed interest and made it difficult to think of who would actually win here, even though it obviously became obvious it was going to be Triple H at the end. I found this to be much more of an enjoyable match than expected, with a hot crowd that made its most mundane moments feel somewhat exciting, and it makes this long slog worth it. It had a lot, but needed just a bit more to go into a territory that very few Rumble matches do tread. I will give this match 3.5 stars. Seems pretty good, right? I would say so myself. Whew, after that incredibly long and intense detailed rambling and analysis, it's time for me to give my final thoughts on this show. This Rumble event had a lot to live up to, as the 2001 version was such a rousing success. Now, did it manage to match the quality and the rating? No, it didn't, but I will give this event credit for trying to. It may not have hit the mark, but at least they tried to make the matches feel as big and epic as they possibly could, given what they had. The Rumble match, while at the time the longest ever, proved predictable and lacking in major star power, it still put on a good show, while the Undisputed title and McMahon Flair matches surprised in their quality. Even the Intercontinental title match did its job in producing a physical contest for a title that honestly deserved it. Even with those good matches, the short women's and tag team title matches let this event down by barely making the minimum grade required rating-wise. Also, due to the Rumble match's length, the fluctuation in match times across this entire card was frustrating at times, making this event quite a prolonged and laboured watch. So when you're not in the right mood, this event isn't the best one to watch, I will say. However, regardless of my negatives, this event came out looking quite positive, with 4 of the 6 matches going above 2.5 stars, and while none broke into 4-star territory, it still proved entertaining for what was on offer and gave some nice moments to remember as well. It wasn't as good as its brethren from the year before, but this is definitely a pay-per-view that's worth a bit of a punt. It started 2002 on what was actually a pretty nice note, hoping that it would carry forward, especially given that we know what WrestleMania 18 would get later on, 2 months down the line. This event did start things off on the right track, building things for what looked to be a good WrestleMania, while still showing the weaknesses in the lower areas of the card that at this time really did hurt the company overall, in my opinion. The 2002 Royal Rumble event gets a quite respectful 6.75 out of 10. Now, if the McMahon, Flair, and women's title matches had reached 3 and 1 star match ratings respectively, you'd be looking at a 7 out of 10 show, and that is pretty good. The thing is, while it's disappointing that it didn't reach that, this just shows what happens if my criteria of ratings and the ratio of good to bad matches on a numbered card event aren't met. Let's just hope the next review that I do, the next event I look at, can do this kind of rating, because the next event we have coming up in August is the Great American Bash 2008. That should be a very interesting look indeed. And there you have it, guys. That is it. The Royal Rumble 2002 flashback is done, and I know it is a very long video, as these always seem to be, but you know I love my detail and I never will stop it. The fact is, I originally planned to have this review out in April of last year. I really did, and it just kept being put back from various different things. And I then thought to myself, yeah, putting it here and starting off this great run of 2002 through to 2010 Big 4 shows seemed like a good idea, and I'm looking forward to doing that. I hope you all are as well, considering this show took a lot longer to get through than I actually thought it would do. Nonetheless, I hope it was all worth the wait. What did you think about this show? Do you think it was good, bad? Do you think I'm wrong or right? Put your opinions down there in the comment section. As I always say, I am very happy to read them. And if you want to see this next upcoming review and many other things, all you have to do is click the subscribe button down there, and I would appreciate your support incredibly. And on that note, it's time to see this month of July out and hope that August can bring the sunshine that, honestly, this summer has not brought to me in this country so far. I have been Freddie Thomas, you've been people listening, watching, probably a combination of the two, I guess. This has been a Friday Flashback pay-per-view review for the CC Network, and I will see you all next time. Cheers!